Welcome to Get and Keep Biz, the video learning series. Today we're going to be talking about the long tail. What is that? Is that the ponytail on the long tail of the pony? Or is that some? Well, it's this. The theory of the long tail is that our culture and economy is increasingly shifting away from a focus on a relatively small number of mainstream products, what we might call the hits, the smash hits, and that they demand the counter space that's available on our brick and mortar stores and lead the head of the demand curve. Whereas what we're really understanding is there's a great amount of riches on the tail end, the long tail end of what we would call the long tail. So it's culture and it's economy. And it's shifting away from this idea of a focus on a small number to a large number. And we're understanding this has a big impact on our marketing efforts. So when we think about the long tail, we think about this curve. The curve is popularity on the left, products on the right. So the more popular products are at the head of the tail. Smash hits, big movies, big heavy demand products. And the further you get out to the right is that there is less market for those products. But what Chris Anderson understood in publishing The Long Tail is there's still a lot of commerce out on the far end. We talked in our last video about these two particular books, Harry Potter and How Good Are You at Backgammon? Well, Harry Potter obviously would wind up over there on the far left, and How Good Are You at Backgammon would be down on the long tail. Not many buyers, presumably, for How Good Are You at Backgammon. But still, there are buyers, especially when you look at the entire aggregate. So this is why the corner bookstore can compete with Amazon. The corner bookstore can actually feed that head, the big part of it over on the left, and the big smash hits. And Amazon can do both. They can both serve the smash hits, and they can make an impact on those goods of very few items down on the far long tail. So there's your Amazon, your bookstore, and how that all works. The hypothesis that we work with here is the long tail exists because the economics of storage and distribution have changed. This is the supply side. And on the demand side, the long tail itself is endogenous, and that is that there are more ways for us to discover variety. The market for niche music, for example, is unbounded. The 98% rule will say that the demand for titles beyond the hits, the big ones that we all know about, is repeatedly experienced to be about 98%. That is, about 98% of the long tail titles sell in a typical quarterly period, selling period. 98% of the long tail titles. So what we try to understand then is what does this? We have access to more supply, so our tastes are becoming more varied. That's what the internet has brought to us. Access to more supply. So the old and the new economics, old school rule number one, in 1897, Vilfredo Pareto. Remember, Pareto's law found that 20% of the population was owned by 80% of the wealth. This was known as the law of the vital few and evolved into the 80-20 rule. Stated that 80% of profits came from 20% of products. So obviously, then what you saw was a lot of retailers stocking only the heavy movers. Old school rule number two, in 1949, George Zipf found that the second most common word used in a document is used 1/2 as much as the first and 1/3 as much as the third. That also applies to distribution of populations. So we see two kinds of complementary thoughts that lead to this. So the two rules that were established by the old economy, limited by geographic and search friction, are no longer relevant as they used to be. So we look at this curve again, the big popularity on the left and the low popular items on the right. We call the left the head and they call the tail the long tail. The tyranny of locality is what this is. And the tyranny of locality, where you live, means the things that are available to you locally are dictated by whatever the local sellers are willing to offer to their potential customers. So if I have a store with limited shelf space, I'm going to offer the stuff that most people in my neighborhood and my shopping area want. The preference minority are consumers whose preferences are dissimilar to the majority. If I happen to be of various, say, Australian descent, and I want to find some sort of Australian products in my local store, Unless there's a lot of other Aussies there, I'm probably not going to find a lot of those Australian products. That's just, I might have to shop online. And that's what the beauty of this has been, is that the online shopping, the Internet of Things, has really brought to us the opportunity to break the tyranny of locality and move and serve the preference minority. It's all about reducing frictions. An audience that is spread too thin geographically used not to get served, but by reducing search friction through the internet, allowing people to find things faster, and geographic friction through a robust door-to-door parcel delivery service like UPS or the United States Postal Service. The preference minorities are now served. If you had a need or a want for a very narrowly demanded product, I can now get it. Now, I might have to pay a premium, but I can get it. And that's really probably the biggest delivery in terms of go-to market strategies when it comes to the idea of serving smaller niche markets. That's the whole concept that we're trying to get across. So, blockbuster mentality, just on the other end, Star Wars. It's a blockbuster. Millions of people are going to see it. It's certainly going to put it on lots of screens and lots of theaters because it has that momentum. $391 million in first week sales. Not too shabby. On the other hand, here comes something that serves the long tail. This is the Netflix selection, where there are thousands of movies and even special series that we can get to. The tyranny of locality says that those little zip code areas where there used to be stores that served those areas always were serving the largest possible audience. The curse of traditional retail, those little rings, is the need to find a local audience can be difficult sometimes. So they need to understand who that is. So an average movie theater will not show a film unless it can draw, say, at least 1,500 people over a 2-week run, because that covers the rent for the screen. An average record store needs to sell at least 4 copies of a CD per year to make it worth carrying. That's rent for half an inch of shelf space. With this kind of market dynamics, the localness of market dictates availability. If you don't have a lot of demand in a given local market, you're probably not going to get your product shelved. For example, this movie, Lagaan, which is basically a very popular Bollywood film, Indian, a blockbuster in India in 2004, played it on just 2 screens in America. So in the tyranny of locality, geography, an audience spread too thinly is the same as no audience at all. However, most of us want more than just the hits. For example, music titles offered at Walmart were 60,000. And when you think about when you have unlimited space, the music titles offered at iTunes is 43 million. That gives you an idea of what the long tail is all about.